Hey, welcome into Husker247 Daily. It is Thursday. We are so close to Nebraska's game against Minnesota being played Friday night on Fox. I am Mike Schaefer, joined by Brian Christopherson, and we got a couple things we want to hit on for today's show. And I want to start with this. Got a question for Brian here. Brian, are you at all surprised that Nebraska's defense hasn't quite been as havoc-inducing as maybe they would hope for at this point in time? They didn't take the ball away against Maryland. They had one sack on the Cade Peters act, kind of correctly diagnosing the run pass play there and taking down Malik Washington. Otherwise, it was a little bit quiet against Maryland. The 2 interceptions against Michigan State, the forced fumble against Michigan. So it's not like the Huskers haven't done anything. But are you at all surprised that the havoc numbers haven't quite been there for a John Butler defense that had wanted to be aggressive?
Maybe a touch. I felt like that might be the factor that helps them neutralize some of their deficiencies a little bit more. I think they have actually sort of found other ways to do that, but I get what you're saying, because I thought maybe there'd be just a couple more turnovers or a couple more plays behind the line of scrimmage per game, aside from Michigan State, that would sort of get them out of the ditch, so to speak, in certain games. They're not terrible at it, though. I mean, I was looking at their takeaways, so they've got 9, and that ranks 42nd. So that's okay. I'd love to see them hit 20, and so if they could have a big second half of the season, that would obviously be huge to get to. What sort of stood out to you there? Because I'm going to go look at another number while you're talking.
Well, I think some of it to me is they haven't faced like a large number of pass attempts. It's obviously gone up the last couple of weeks with Michigan State and with Maryland, but it's hard to intercept passes when teams aren't throwing the ball that much against you. And the reason that they're not is they haven't really been able to sustain drives. I mean, you have the 2 games with Houston Christian and with Akron where I think Nebraska had a takeaway in there. But for the most part, I mean, you're getting these games where you haven't faced a ton of passing attempts, so it is hard to come away with interceptions. It also doesn't feel like Nebraska gets their hand on a lot of passes. That's the other thing with it. Like when there have been incompletions, the ball's either just sort of sailed or what have you. But so there's different areas. The thing is, it's hard to be upset with what Nebraska is doing in terms of pass defense. They just allowed over 200 yards for the first time this season last week. So it's a situation where they played well enough in the secondary. It's just I'm getting a little greedy here, wondering when they're going to start taking the ball away with a little bit more consistency.
Yeah. I mean, they're okay right now. I agree, though. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see them get so they had 9 in the first 6 games, get like 12 at least in the back half would be huge for this team. I was looking at their TFLs. I mean, they're 27th in TFLs nationally, so that's not bad with 40.
No, that's better than I would have guessed, to be honest.
I mean, they had 12 against Michigan State, and John Butler kind of spoke about that this week. Matt Rule actually kind of gave a different answer, said John has high standards. I actually thought the pressure was all right at, in some key spots against Maryland. But Butler wants him to hit that quarterback a little bit more. And the Michigan State game, I think, is the prime example. Even though the Spartans got some stuff done in the third quarter, most of that game, you felt like Aiden Childs was rattled. And it started from the first series, and that was because of sort of what this topic is about and wreaking havoc. So maybe it's actually one of those subjects that's almost beyond the numbers a little bit. It's like, can you hit the guy enough that you're just in his head in the first, packs things into the fourth quarter. With sacks, they only have 10, which ranks like 95th. So they're very low in sacks. They've missed some plays around the quarterback, and that's probably, as I think about it, the biggest thing I'd say in this whole topic is there's been some plays where they just haven't finished quite as much as they could. And I know that's a focal point going forward. It's like Deshaun McCullough has been very active, and I think it can be a difference maker in the second half of the season, but I bet you he would say that he should have like 2 or 3 more sacks maybe. And Williams-Nwaneri probably feels like he could have another 1 or 2. So if they can close those down in these next games, it's going to be huge, and maybe even just as much as the turnover count.
Yeah, and I think they're going to have some opportunity against Minnesota, who's going to be dropping back quite a bit if Nebraska can kind of bow up against that running game early, kind of force Minnesota into the way that they've had to play most of the year, which is through the air and the arm of Drake Lindsey. So that'll certainly be a matchup that we're watching on Friday up in Minneapolis when Nebraska takes on Minnesota. There's another big matchup this weekend. We're in that time of year where the sports start to converge a little bit. Football, which is the king in this part of the country, it gives a little sliver, just a little sliver to the start of college basketball, and we've got Nebraska with a very unique exhibition game on Saturday against BYU. Some would say, hey, why isn't this a non-conference game? Why can't Nebraska bring a BYU to play a game? And Nebraska travels out there. Maybe that'll happen down the line, but exhibition game nonetheless. This is a good BYU team, and I'm excited to hear how it all goes for a Nebraska team that we don't know what to make of quite yet. But I'm kind of high on them. I don't know. I just blindly buying in because it's another wholesale change, save for Rink Mass and Sam Hoiberg, Cale Jacobson. You get Jamarcus Lawrence back, but I'm very very intrigued by what happens with Nebraska in basketball in 25-26.
Yeah, the BYU team they're playing Saturday at noon at PBA is ranked 8th in the preseason polls nationally. Some think it's a Final Four team. They spent a lot of money on it. They have maybe the top pick in the next NBA draft in AJ DeBonta, and he's a 6'9" guy that is going to be exciting to watch. Richie Saunders was a first-team All-Big 12 player for BYU a season ago. So they're a loaded-up squad. And so from Nebraska's standpoint, of course, since it's an exhibition, they're going to play more guys, probably play 10 or 11 guys, Hoiberg said. And it's more of just a growth game. I mean, you see where you size up against a team like that. Obviously you'd love to win it, but more than anything, I think you're tinkering with your lineups and you're seeing what sort of works against that level of competition. We know who Nebraska is going to start. It's Lawrence, Sanford, Cale Jacobson, Berke, and Rink Mass. I don't know that anything shocked me there, and it's also just an exhibition. They can move pieces around as they go into the season. Cale really earned his spot, it sounds like, through the offseason, sort of picking up where he left off with the Crown performance. And also, he's a 6'4" guy who can play all the spots and just sort of, I think probably they feel matches up well in this game. Like he can get Nebraska organized their first time on the floor in front of fans, and there's probably going to be some butterflies and all that. I also think it'll be a little bit emotional, or at least kind of a cool moment when Rink probably steps on the court for the first time again after his 15-month rehab from that injury. And obviously Jamarcus Lawrence too, returning after a year at Rhode Island.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be a cool moment to see Rink Mast out there again. I mean, for me, it'll be probably the regular season opener, but I'm excited to see kind of how quickly he can shake some of that rust off, what he sort of looks like, how he's utilized. If Nebraska has a different cast of characters around Rink Mast in 2025 than when the season ended for him in Memphis in 2024. So, that alone means that he could end up being a little bit different version of himself. And so I want to see what that looks like. Excited to hear about how some of these guys shoot, how a Connor Essegian does. It feels like he could be someone who comes off the bench for Nebraska as a bit of a scoring threat for them in bunches. I did wonder how Hoiberg would put together a rotation that involves some of these shooters where you can't have them all on the court at the same time. So how do you kind of space some of it out? So we're not going to have any real answers coming out of this exhibition game, but it's good to kind of get this thing started, and it'll be a good measuring stick for Nebraska.
Yeah, I liked Rink's outlook too. He's dealt with this for a year and a half of sort of having to have patience and not putting too much stock into just one day or what your next step is necessarily. Like overdoing it like if it didn't go well. So I think he's going to have a good head on his shoulders. And I would guess he probably has limited minutes Saturday, to be honest. And, if he plays well, that's great, he said, but he's also going to take it for what it is and be realistic as he's building right now. And so hopefully everyone understands that. I think they do as they go to the arena. It's not going to be probably the full version of what he is yet. He's close. Oh, it sounds like he's looking really good. I'm just saying you got to work out the rust, I think, of competition probably for a few games before you feel like you're back. I like, too, the idea of Connor maybe being that sixth man as we get into the season, but we'll see. Maybe that'll shift. Maybe he's a starter at some point. But I do think it's kind of a good setup when you have a team where you feel like you've got a sixth and seventh guy who you can kind of bank on giving you that lift, and we'll see how quickly they can find it.
All right. And that exhibition game that's going on at noon on Saturday at Pinnacle Bank Arena. BYU comes to town. Exhibition game for Nebraska. All right, Brian, that does it for us today here on Husker 247 Daily. We invite you to check out Husker247.com. Plenty of coverage leading up to this Nebraska-Minnesota game. We're going to have a what we're looking for a little bit later on Thursday, so you can check that out. That normally comes out on Friday, but with it being a short week, we got to bump everything up. This is Nebraska's second weekday game already this season, and they've got a third one later in the year as well. So they're going to be veterans by the time Black Friday rolls around. They're going to have this all down to a science. All right, we will catch you guys later.